An extraordinary event is about to take place. In a quiet corner of Northern Ireland, the pain caused by terrible violence will be confronted. At Ballywalter House, victims and perpetrators prepare to meet. And coming to guide them, the world's greatest champion of truth and reconciliation.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good morning.
Archbishop Tutu will chair face-to-face meetings between victims and men who inflicted violence.
I do not regret the fact that I was involved in the IRA. As a matter of fact, I'm very proud of it.
I joined because I wanted to kill Catholics.
You're out to kill. You're out to kill as many British soldiers as possible.
The perpetrators will be questioned directly by the victims.
I have nothing to gain by this.
You said you had your hand on the gun.
Yes,
on
I
the
just found the
trigger.
weapon.
So if your hand was on the trigger, who pulled it?
My husband went in to rescue people and they blew him up. Now, do you think that it's fair that people do that?
No.
You said yourself you were out to shoot a gunman. You were angry?
I was angry.
You were very angry. You were out for revenge.
Will you forgive me?
Can you?
With Archbishop Tutu is Donna Hicks of Harvard University. She's widely experienced in conflict situations like the Middle East, Sri Lanka and Colombia. And Leslie Belinda. Her husband was murdered in the Rwandan genocide, and she went there to try to find his killers and learn the truth about his death. But the guiding presence is a man who knows how to lead people on a journey to honesty.
We expect, obviously, that all who come here are telling us the gospel truth.
In this program, one of the most notorious figures of the conflict comes face to face with victims of his violence. The former loyalist paramilitary Michael Stone was sentenced to more than 600 years in prison, but was released under the Good Friday Agreement. Now he meets the family of Dermot Hackett, a Catholic man he murdered. The Hacketts have waited years for this day. In 1988, Michael Stone achieved worldwide notoriety when he attacked an IRA funeral and killed 3 people. An attack caught on film. He became a hate figure for nationalists, but a hero to militant loyalists. After his arrest, Stone admitted 3 other murders. One of them was Dermot Hackett, ambushed in 1987 as he drove his bread van to work. Dermot Hackett was 37 and married with a young daughter. His wife was pregnant with their second child. Michael Stone claims he was a member of the IRA, a claim which infuriates the Hackett family. Dermot Hackett's brother Roddy, wife Sylvia and daughter Sabrina want to challenge Michael Stone.
come. We understand. Good morning. I want to welcome you, Mrs. Sylvia Hackett, your brother-in-law, Rodi, and Sabrina. You too, Mr. Michael Stone. You have taken a very courageous and important step forward by being together at the same table. This is a forum, we hope, a forum that provides a safe space, and we hope that we sitting here will be able to facilitate the telling of your stories. Sylvia, will you please make an opening statement?
I'm here today just to ask Mr. Stone a few questions. I don't know if I'll get the truth or not, but it's just a few things that I would need to know, and the reason behind it all. For the sake of my girls, the sake of myself, and the sake of Dermot's family. I can't understand why you done it, and who put you up, who was all behind all this, and why was my husband targeted. I asked you today, Mr. Stone, could you give me all those answers? And I won't forgive you. I have just no feelings for you. Why you destroyed me, girls, my home that I almost lost, and just not the death. Those came all behind it. I was pregnant. I was in the hospital 14 weeks. I lost 3.5 stone. I had to go through an emergency section. 6 months down the line, my mother died. The shock never left her face the day that she died. Do you understand what we went through? Is not just the death of the shooting, afterwards. What we had to go through, what we had to do, and I had no help from nobody. I had to do it all myself.
Michael?
I became a loyalist paramilitary at the age of 16. I'm 50-year-old now. 2 failed marriages due to my paramilitary activities in the past. 9 children. And none of whom I know very well. I was never there for them, either when I was an active loyalist paramilitary before my arrest or the 12 years I spent in prison. I was convicted in 1989 of 6 killings, 6 murders of nationalists, Republicans and members of PARA, the Provisional Irish Republican Army. 4 of those killings I was personally responsible for, in that I pulled the trigger. 2, I had involvement in, I conspired to assassinate these individuals. One of the 2 was a Mr. Dermot Hackett, In 1989, I was convicted of his murder. I made statements in 1988 when I was arrested that I indeed had killed Mr. Hackett. I stated that I had read his file, a file that was provided by Loyalist intelligence officers. I don't believe it was fabricated. It was detailed. His place of work, his home, his family circumstances, his relatives, details of who he socialised with, large black and white photographs of him when he was out and about his business with known members of PARA, the Provisional Irish Republican Army.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. We are hoping you are going to continue telling that story. This was just, as it were, the opening round for you to engage with each other, because now we are going to be asking that you make the extended statement. Sylvia, would you?
Jeremy was a good man. We were married 10 years. He was interested in Vincent de Paul. His choir, Derry Operatic, his bread van, his band that he played was Protestants in the band. Most of his customers were Protestants. And he was one of the best. He done no wrong to nobody, in my eyes. He wasn't selfish. He was very kind, considerate. He was everything as a husband was, a father. He was the best.
What was life like in your...
My life was good. I had no care. I had no worry. It was good. Everybody stood ups and downs, yes. But I had a good life with them. We were just getting on our feet to be able to hope. The Friday before it happened, he found out he was pregnant, or I was pregnant with his second child after 10 years. Jeremy had friends on both sides of the community. Both sides. In fact, he had more Protestant friends than he had of his own religion.
Can you tell us what you remember about the day Dermot was shot on the 23rd of May, 1987?
It was a Saturday morning. We had a shop. And I worked all week. And I didn't want to get up early Saturday morning to open the shop. My father knocked at the window. To get up, I went to the door. Policeman walked in. I said, Jeremy had been shot. I asked him, was he dead? He said, yes. And that was the only conversation I had with the policeman. We went up to the morgue. I couldn't believe it was him. I just couldn't believe it was him. We brought him home. And we waked him. He was buried Monday morning. I still couldn't take it in. I took it in when everybody had left. I was on my own. I realised then what happened. What? I can't understand why. To this day I don't know why. I was pregnant with Rebecca. I lost 3.5 stone. I couldn't eat. I was in the hospital for 14 weeks. came home with the child. The next thing, my house was threatened because we didn't have an insurance policy on mortgage. They threatened to sell the house. So I had to go back to work, get my feet on the ground. I got a few pounds in Northern Ireland. I paid off my mortgage. I paid Derby's debts. I bought a house, and all I have today is a house and my 2 girls. People used to say to me, "How are you today, Sylvia?" "I'm grand." "How are you today?" "I don't know." I was repeating and repeating and repeating myself. I just still can't take it on what has actually happened. Derby was a good fella, he was a good man. And I say to you now, if it had been all the way around, he wouldn't have done it to you. Is it worth it? Was it worth it? At the end of the day, there's only one God. We're all going to face him. I can face mine. It's just been awful.
Sylvia and Roddy, what was your reaction when you heard that Dermot was targeted as a member of the IRA?
I felt totally disgusted by the whole thing. I mean, I have known my brother up to his death. He never had any inkling of any sort of terrorism in him. He couldn't have it. It wasn't in his nature. It definitely was not. But I mean, a few things were associated with him. I mean, by association, at the time that he was shot around that area, there was the thing about the butter mountain that was going on. There was this excess butter in Europe that they were giving out to the poor and needy. Jeremy happened to be one of the people, because of St Vincent de Paul, who was helped in the actual allocation of this stuff. But there was also other people with political affiliations tied in with that. I mean, and people were putting one and one together and coming up with 3. He was also gone down. One of the local political organisations used to collect outside the chapels. Our Dermy used to go down to lift the St Vincent de Paul money. And I'm sure people again have turned around and said, "Oh, he's in collecting Sinn Féin's money as the actual group." Like, I mean, after he died, and all the news flashes and all the rest of it, he was cast as a member of Sinn Féin. He was a member of this and a member of that.
They denied
and
it.
then all bit by bit it began to come through that it was denied and denied.
IRA denied it.
You see, this is the high profile that he was getting. And I mean, it wasn't that he wanted it. No way.
Can I also say one more thing? Now, I have seen IRA funerals. Right? I've seen what happened. If Jeremy had been in the IRA came in and took over my house, took over the funeral, which they have done in funerals. That never happened. The IRA put it over the TV that he was not associated with the IRA. Sinn Féin done the same.
What is your understanding today of who is responsible for the killing of your husband?
Mr. Stone. But you had to be given information, because how could a man from Belfast know anything about a man in a wee town of Castle Laird? You had been given the information where he was that particular morning, what route he took to his work. Somebody had to tell you, because you didn't find it all out by yourself. It's like somebody saying to me, "Woke up and see Mr. Stone, and where does he live?" I would need directions. I would need to where I was going, because I wouldn't have a clue. So somebody behind you had to help you.
And will the truth be helpful to you, perhaps to bring a closure?
Yes, if it is the truth.
If you
If it is the truth, I'll accept it.
Yes.
I'll even shake hands with them. If I get the truth only. But how do I know I'm getting it?
I want to say a very big thank you to yourselves for allowing us the privilege of looking and seeing your anguish and your pain and your desire to bring this to a proper close. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much for your patience too, Michael. We would hope now that you would give us an extended statement and tell us your story.
In many cases, it's an unremarkable story. You know, I was from Belfast, the height of the Troubles, late 60s, early 70s. I became a paramilitary at 16, the Ulster Defence Association. I was imprisoned at the age of 16 and a half in Long Kesh on a firearms offence. It was called the University of Terror at that time. It was an internment camp and a prison for political prisoners, loyalist and Republican. And over that 6 months I became highly politicised, taught Ulster history, Protestant politics, Unionist politics. I also became proficient in the ways of terrorism, so to speak, firearms, explosives. And at the age of 17 I left Long Kesh, and for some 15, 16 years after that I was a highly active loyalist paramilitary. There's this romanticism that well, it's a fact that you want to protect your family, your community, and your Britishness. And I have to admit, over the years, become jaded, politically jaded, you know. And it was vengeance, revenge. I first joined up, become a loyalist paramilitary. Years later, it was justice I sought. I was involved in a number of what can be classified as sectarian activities over the years, and but in the latter years I became in specifically targeting known Republicans, members of Sinn Féin, IRA, and I was proactive in that I wanted to take the war to the enemy.
So when your family did discover that you were involved in the loyalist movement, what was their response? How did they feel about it?
My wife was in shock. I think my ex-wife was on medication for 2-3 years after it. Never forgave me, didn't know my business. I'd have disappeared for weekends. I was a self-employed builder. Where are you going? I'd have got my work clothes, my tools. I'd have put the trailer in the back of my car with a cement mixer. I'd have drove several miles away, garaged the car and trailer, and then transport would have picked me up and took me to the area of operation, wherever I was going to be active in. When I came back, I'd have rubbed mud, cement into my clothes, giving the impression that I'd been working on a building site. I lived a lie, a selfish lie. You know, I lied to my family, two wives, both at times thought I was having affairs with other women. But you can't turn around and say, no, I'm away shooting people, you know, because you try and keep your own family together.
Could we go back to Dermot? Can you tell us how the file was developed, like targeting him? Say a little more about that.
When I set out, as in the case of Mr. Hackett, he was, I didn't know existed. I had a meeting with loyalist paramilitaries in Mid-Ulster, and they produced several files of known members of the IRA volunteers, soldiers. And in amongst those was Mr. Hackett's. It was known that he lived in a Republican hotbed, Castlederg. There were large black and white photos of him, and with known Republicans.
On that point, on the intelligence, was there something specific that convinced you that he should be a target?
Well, like ASU's, active service units, you know, they have gunmen, they have bombers, but they need the intelligence. The operations need to be set up. And Mr. Hackett was put down as an intelligence officer. He was put down that he ferried munitions in his mother's pride bread delivery van. There was also information, and at the time, when the police questioned me about it, I said that the trays that held the bread and foodstuffs had white paper lining in the bottom of the trays, and there were traces of munitions. They had been tested. Now, I don't know how the loyalist paramilitaries knew this, the intelligence officers, because they don't have the facilities, obviously, to test for cordite, to test for explosives. But a meeting was held. It just wasn't a case of, yeah, well, we'll kill this guy because he's a Catholic and we don't like him. It doesn't happen that way. One, I don't wish to be arrogant, but I would not have risked my life or my liberty to travel hundreds of miles down into the Mid-Ulster area to kill an innocent man because of his religion. My life and my liberty were worth more to me, you know.
So if we stay with Dermot Hackett then, and the intelligence that was gathered, were you yourself over in Castlederg? Did you follow him? Did you set eyes on him? Were you there yourself to see the situation?
I done several dry runs following his van through the countryside, Omagh, Drumquin, Castlederg, and I was a soldier. It was a military operation as far as I was concerned. It's what I'd been involved with for up to that point, 15, 16 years. It was no different than any other operation. It was take the target out, get out of the area, get safe back to base. There was nothing personal. You don't say, I'm going to hurt that guy's family. It just doesn't happen. He's a soldier, you're a soldier, you do the job.
And when you say that it's a military operation, you would not wish to hurt the man's family, can you separate these entirely in your mind? Is there no thought that by taking out this man that you will be destroying a family?
Of course there is, but you tend to dehumanise the target. You don't, when you look at a file, you don't look at the details of the kids and the wife. But no, after an incident like Mr. Hackett and it came on the radio, I didn't watch television. I didn't buy a newspaper because that humanises the target. There he's with a photograph, maybe his wife, kids. There he is maybe lying on a country road, lying alone, you know, and that does affect you. You know, you harden yourself to it. I do. You know, I've seen a lot myself. I've seen friends die. I've come under fire from Republicans and security forces throughout the years. So you tend to harden you distance yourself. Had I sat and thought Mrs. Hackett was pregnant at the time, that I didn't know. But if they says there's a young child plus the lady's pregnant, and I'd have says, well, we'll move on. I have to be honest, I still see him as a legitimate target, but we'll move on from there. Because at the time of Mr. Hackett's death, my second wife was pregnant with my daughter. And we're not all monsters.
So Sorry, I was just going to say, you had gathered the evidence, you had been given all the information. What else did you have? What was your role? What else did you have as a role in this murder?
I knew the calibre and make of the weapon, a submachine gun, a 9mm Mark V Sterling submachine gun. I had test fired the weapon several weeks before. I don't wish to distance myself from Mr. Hackett's death, because morally I conspired to assassinate the man. I'd done everything but pull the trigger. As I said, legally, technically, I conspired to assassinate Mr. Hackett. But several days before that, I pulled out. When questioned in Musgrave Park Hospital on the 16th of March 1988, I was questioned about some 30 plus assassinations over a period of 17 years. Mr. Hackett came into the questioning, and I knew at that time that a young UDA volunteer from Omagh had been arrested in connection, several months before my arrest, in connection with Mr. Hackett's death, in that he stole a car that was used in the getaway. A car that the young fellow hadn't a clue what it was for. He thought it was for a robbery or whatever, but he ended up getting a life sentence for stealing a car. But at that time, when they put it to me, did I know, or was I responsible for Mr. Hackett's death, I said yes. My motive was to get the young fellow, 16, released, and to close the book on the case as far as the security forces were concerned, in that they wouldn't investigate the incident any longer, and the volunteers who had travelled up from Belfast would be free to continue their war against the Provisional IRA.
May I just ask, we expect obviously that all who come here unburdening themselves are telling us the gospel truth as far as they are concerned, and we would obviously hope, that you can say that what you have said here is gospel for you.
I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a liar. Did I kill Mr. Hackett? No, I didn't kill Mr. Hackett. Would I have killed Mr. Hackett if another operation wasn't in process? I would have killed Mr. Hackett. But on the day, no. I took responsibility to try and get a young fellow out of jail and to leave the way open for those volunteers who took his life to continue their war with the IRA.
What you may have heard, say, from the family with regard to his activities, does that throw any doubt in your mind about his activities, that in fact he might not have been the military person that you believed he was?
I have to be truthful. No, it doesn't. My family hadn't a clue who I was, or what I was at and what I'd done, and as far as I'm concerned, he was a soldier. I appreciate the hurts there. I can see the Hackett family, and they're hurt and they're angry, and to be honest, I feel humbled, and I can see they're good people.
Thank you so very much. We will now move on to the next section, where, having heard your separate statements, you may now, you're facing one another, and there are questions, I'm sure, that you want to ask one another. Sylvia?
Why turn around, Mr. Stone, and 1 minute you say you've done it, the next minute you say you haven't, now you tell me now you haven't. I don't believe it. Why would you take the rap for other people? Because I certainly wouldn't.
I don't want to be repetitive, but I'll say to you now, I'm as responsible as the gunman that pulled the trigger that killed your husband. Yes. But I did not shoot the man. I had nothing to gain by this.
You said you had your hand on the gun.
Yes,
on
I
the trigger.
The weapon.
So if your hand was on the trigger, who pulled it?
Other volunteers in a different unit, ASUs. You don't know. I wouldn't know. You don't.
But you're bound to know.
You don't know. I was Tony May. That was my name when I was 20. I had a big heavy beard, long hair down to my back, you know, and I was Tony. I looked like a hunger striker, people used to say. In fact, they used to say, he looks like Black Irish, he looks like a Republican, and that was just part of the disguise. So no one knew who I was. I didn't know. You don't need to know, because you don't want that to become a bridge you have to burn in latter years where you're panicking and going, is some guy going to be lifted for a petty offence and give you up to the security forces years later. I'll not lie to you, and it's your husband and you loved him and a good man, and I was a good family man too. Past tense, I've lost my family.
Why did you risk it for you? Why did
because I was selfish. I admit that I was selfish. I lived a lie, I lived a double life, but I became indoctrinated as a loyalist paramilitary. I became an active volunteer, and I don't apologise for that, but I took lives. I know it's contradictory. Well, if you lift a gun, obviously you're going to take someone's life, but I regret having taken other men's lives, you know, because if you say it doesn't affect you, it's a lie.
Right, you said on his files that they had guns and all in the van. Did you actually see them yourself?
No, obviously not.
So you took
I can only say it wasn't word, it was documented.
I know it was documented.
It was typed out, it was intel.
Would you not have went out and investigated that before you done anything?
But I can't.
You not go and say to yourself, I must go out and prove, was there guns or was there stuff in the van?
What you're saying is intelligence gathering was done. Like you say, my brother was supposed to be a guy that gathered intelligence and all this. But the point is, when you say documented, anybody could write a document, but is there actually photographic evidence? If they were so thorough in your organisation, did they take photographs? Did they come up with them handing over rifles? Did they see them taking out weapons? You just took what was on the face value. I mean, we're always told, you believe the written word all the time. You know, is that what you were saying?
The people involved would not have insulted me for me to risk my life or my liberty going down to kill an innocent Catholic. I'll put it black and white. If it had come out and I was involved in taking someone's life and it came out he was an innocent man and I double checked and he was an innocent man, I would have went and seen those loyalist paramilitaries.
Yeah.
But did you prove?
I would have, and that would have meant that I would have took their lives for risking my life. Seriously.
But I can't, you know, too, and your thing is you made yourself the thing that you did become infamous for what you done in Middletown Cemetery. What planning went into that? I mean, for a man that was so meticulous, all of a sudden you appear out of nowhere and you start firing hand grenades. Well, I'm just going by what I've seen on the television. You know, you give me the impression that you're somebody that'll not do anything without it being pre-planned. Did something in your psyche tell you that this is it, I'm finished, I want out of this is the way out? I mean, were you hoping that day that somebody would lift the gun and shoot you?
No. Self-preservation.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but it seemed, you know...
Well, I don't want that operation, I really don't, and I've never went into any great depth involved in that operation. But I was asked, why'd you go to Middletown Cemetery? And I know it's a different case than your own. I went to Middletown Cemetery because that's where the IRA were. Bottom line, Sinn Féin.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
that's where they were.
I mean, you're giving off that you're so meticulous in what you do, you plan it out, and all of a sudden, you know, you come up with this, that's the reason why you were actually caught. That's why then eventually my brother's thing come onto the scope. I don't know what the story is at the end of the day, but I mean, you hear, I mean, this is all hearsay.
It's all hearsay.
Like they turn around and tell you, you know, that security forces do have to clear up records. I mean, did they turn around and say, well, Mr. Stone here, you've already been done for Middletown Cemetery, here's a couple of more. Wouldn't mind, would you sort of tick the boxes here and say it's somebody other, just to give us a wee bit, so it could look as if we're being effective?
Well, you know, obviously that does come into it, but as I said, I was questioned about 28 other killings that I wasn't responsible for, but to the degree that I conspired to kill your brother. Yes.
Well, by association in a way.
Yeah, I was down there, I knew the weapon, and that's how, and I don't want to go into the legalities of it, but in the actual getaway vehicle, you know, I don't want to get too technical, the bread van was high up. The Opel Manta was low down.
Yeah.
And they have in my statement that I leaned out and up and was able to fire parallel.
But you said that yourself.
But that's a physical impossibility. When I went to prison, it was said to me, when I went to prison, they opened there was the photograph of the getaway vehicle, and I didn't know that it had a sunroof, that the gunman stood up through the sunroof in line with the target.
Can I just intervene to ask that we establish, Michael, you would want to continue saying this is someone who, well, deserved to die?
I'm not saying, I've never said someone deserved to die. No one deserves to die. No one.
You say no one deserves to die. How do you then justify the killing of people on one side and maybe the killing on people on the other side?
With great difficulty. Always with great difficulty. And as I previously said, you dehumanise the target. You don't. I don't mean that you see them as some sort of monster. You see them as a uniform, as a member of an organisation, or as a soldier. And in the context in which I took their lives, I seen them as all those. They were the enemy.
So, Michael, today you've come here not as a soldier, but today, from what I understand and I gather, your purpose is to come here as a human being and to speak to the family of Dermot. And I'm just wondering, in this context today, whether you can still look at Sylvia and Roddy and say, yes, this killing was justified.
At that time, and as I said, the circumstances and the fact that I was would have been willing to take a man's life, yes, it would have been justified. It's
today,
regrettable.
What about today?
Today, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and you know, you become jaded and you become less politicised, and you know, and I have grandchildren now, and that's one thing I found difficult. Mr. Hackett's daughters and his grandchildren, they never got a chance to see those, but I don't get a chance to see my own grandchildren for security reasons. I have 3 out of the 5 grandchildren I've never seen.
That was your choice.
I'm not harping about that. That is down to me.
It wasn't Jeremy's choice.
It really wasn't.
It was not Jeremy's choice. You had yours. He didn't have his.
You see,
all I can say is I was acting on what I read, and it was no different than stuff I'd read for 16 years on different Republican targets, on legitimate targets.
And I would love to see these files, and I would love to see these footage. Could I see them, or can I see them? Where are they?
They come, they go. So, you know, I've read files on Jerry Adams, on Martin McGuinness,
yes,
in-depth files, and they come, they go.
I'm not worried about Martin McGuinness now. I'm worried about Jeremy's files.
I don't know.
Were you the last person that had them? When they gave you the file, were you the last person to have that file before Jeremy was shot?
I don't know.
Somebody come to you, handed you the file out of the unit. What did you do with them?
What did you do then with the files and the photographs? And where exactly did they go?
I really don't know. You know, you're in a safe house, you're showing the information, and that's it.
I'm saying you left that safe house, left the file in it, and somebody come along and moved it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, obviously.
You didn't actually physically hand it back to somebody and say...
No, they're left. Once you've established...
Well, that's, you know, I'm to say with you, I mean, at the end of the day, your intelligence is flawed. There's somewhere along the line, I don't know, we could use the word set up. Obviously,
it definitely was set up.
We could turn it into already set up. We can't prove it. But the point is, I'm saying that he got a high profile that he did not deserve, and it was the written word, not photographic thing, it was the written word that got my brother shot.
Yeah.
But yet, no, I don't know why anybody can sit down and say that to switch off and turn around and become dehumanize a target. I mean, at the on-off switch, I don't think, I mean, you've given me the impression, you're a family man, you're regretting now about your own family. I mean, I, in a way, do feel a bit sorry for you, that you don't have any life now. But then, as you say, you picked it. You know, really, you know, at the end of the day, I could turn around, and as I say, I don't use the word hate, and I'm not going to turn around here and say, I hate you. I abhor what you stood for and what you done. Not just on my brother, but on a whole of a lot of other people
too.
And any other paramilitary that thinks, when I work and think that my children are going to come up, and hopefully that they'll come up in peace. I'm sure you wonder the same about your own family, that they'll come up, be able to get jobs, rear their own family, settle down to a peaceful community.
Rodney, excuse me, you've asked some very important questions here, very pivotal questions, and I wonder if we could give Michael a chance to respond. That's all right.
I'm sorry.
No, as I said, I have my regrets. You know, the regrets with my own family. I don't know my kids. They're good kids. They've grown up with their own children. But no, I don't seek sorrow or, you know, or redemption. Because I have my political beliefs. They're in the past. I said you can become jaded, you know, throughout the years. And the switch off thing with me, and I only speak personally, I don't speak for other loyalist paramilitaries, is that in the context of dehumanizing an individual, is you don't want to think that he has someone back home waiting for him. So obviously you try, it's an emotional thing, but no, that's the path I chose when I was 16. I don't wish to come across as hard-hearted or some sort of psychopath. You know, I'm pigeonholed. I'm known as the Milltown Cemetery Killer. And that's a terrible burden, and I brought that upon myself, and that's something I have to live with, you know, but more for my kids, you know, as your father, the cemetery killer, you know, you feel like Freddy Krueger, you know, some fictional character, but that's all my doing, and my doing alone. I wasn't forced to become a loyalist paramilitary. But as I said, this was a civil war, and there were thousands killed on both sides. I'm a product of that, and I acknowledge I've caused hurt, I've caused pain, I've heard men's last words, I've heard grown men shout "mommy" before they died, and that sticks with me to this day, even though it might have happened some 15, 20 years ago. That never leaves you. But as I said, no, you desensitize yourself, you try and not think about it. For me to admit that it was wrong, it is wrong taking a human life. You know, I knew that. You know,
can I just ask, having had a bit of exchange, I mean, and something that we would have hoped had happened a great deal earlier for all of the people of this beautiful part of the world. When you, having had this experience, when you look across the table, what do you think, what do you feel, what do you think you see?
Well, to me, the person, as you say, gave you that file, he was more or less giving you my husband's death sentence. You should have went out, you should have checked it. Was it true? Was it not true? Now, what you done to your family, you done that by choice. I feel sorry, not for you. I feel sorry for your children, who's going to grow up knowing what the father was. I pray for you, I honestly do. I forgive you. But I'll tell you one thing. I can face my man above. I hope you can face yours. You left me no husband. You left me almost without a home. I had to fight and suffer. My mother's dead now. God rest her. Help me. Died 6 months after it. And I blame you for that too.
Can I ask Michael, for you to say, as you sit there looking at Sylvia and Roddy, do you see a family who's lost a loved one, or the family of an IRA man? What do you see as you look at them?
Well, obviously they've lost a loved one. I can see that, and all these years later it still affects them. And I think it's very brave of them coming here to confront me today. It's something I couldn't do. Had you killed my brother, I'd have found it very hard to be restrained physically, because that's who and what I am. So basically you're better people than I am. That you can come, you can talk about it, and you be objective. Obviously you're hurt. I wish I could take your hurt away. I wish I could take everyone's hurt away throughout the whole of the Troubles. And I appreciate Mrs. Hackett's forgiveness for my part, involvement in the murder of her husband. And other than that, I hope she, perhaps she's confronted her demons in meeting me, and if it and if it's been any use to her. I know she had closure in thinking that I was personally responsible for her husband's death, but as I've said before, I belong to an organisation, and morally I'm as responsible for her husband's death as anyone else.
But as see now, we are the human side of what you actually done. It's I don't know, you say you just dehumanise yourself, but maybe it's time that you did look and see at the human side of what it does do, But life has always been held very cheap in Northern Ireland. It's proven by all the atrocities. We could rein them off here, but it's not, going to bring Dermot back. But at least it has given us a wee bit of ease. I am glad to meet you now. We're a bit heartbroken, a bit heavy-hearted about it. But as I say, in the days and the weeks to come, it'll get easier and easier, so hopefully. That's really all at the minute I am,
I'm lost.
We have, it seems to me, reached an extraordinary point here. Michael has spoken about regret and even asking for forgiveness. If you are able there was earlier on what Sylvia had suggested about shaking hands. But that must be something that comes from yourselves. Perhaps more than from yourselves, that it is God who is present in this moment, a moment we could not contrive, that there is need for healing on all sides.
Yes. And I honestly said, you know, at the end of the day, he's become a statistic. The only thing is, at the end of the day, all I am looking for is that my brother is not gone into the annals of the history of Northern Ireland as a member of a paramilitary organisation who was shot for being on active service. So we are going to have to keep protesting his innocence.
Yes.
But because we know in our hearts that he definitely was not. He was a family man, and as far as I'm concerned.
You know he was.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm really sorry for this.
Oh my God, my God.
It's a normal reaction, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, I know.
Yes.
There's so much forgiveness and it's unbelievable, you know. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd say that has been the worst thing, possibly maybe for me ever to do, but I mean, at the end of the day, why should we keep pouring oil on a fire that we hope eventually will go out, you know,
yes.
that we'll get back to peace and this, and if this is some way towards it.
I don't know whether you want to.
No, I could not have done that, I have to be honest. You're a better man than me, and Mrs. Hackett is a better person, more Christian person. There are times, even today, I'm still angry about things, and you know, but you're better people than I am.
Thank you very much. We have a closing which we could not have contrived. I want to thank you. We want to thank you because you have done something that didn't seem to be possible. Even just coming here required so much courage. And yeah, the readiness to be touched. And I think we sitting here are very deeply humbled by yourselves. We pray that God will bless you and that God will continue God's grace of healing yourselves and healing your land. And it is only because there are people like yourselves that there is hope.
You can see interviews with all those who took part in this series on BBC Two's broadband website.